Mind, it's time to get light. Welcome, folks, to Gimpin' Ain't Easy, because it ain't. Episode number 18. Yeah, if episode numbers were years, our kid would be going off to college now, unless he failed a couple grades. And if me in 1942 reproduced, I think he probably failed at least 4 grades. So our kid's getting into grade 8 now, if episode numbers were years. We've once again got real sponsors that I'm real happy about, and you can hit us up for that. Look me up, Josh Dunn at Facebook. We are gimpinain'teasy@gmail.com. That's no G at the end of Gimpin, no apostrophe in ain't, and easy with a Z like Easy E. Check us out. Brought to you this week by Elsie's Vintage Clothing, where all the clothes are new to you. Hey, if nothing else is working in your life, you can live it in style for a reasonable price. We're also brought to you this week once again by the Black Market, specializing in quality and affordable items from across the globe. We guarantee you won't get arrested at this Black Market. We're also brought to you once again, as always, by Café Saint-Poil, where you're guaranteed a good cup of coffee and a wide assortment of treats for insanely low prices. How do they stay in business? And where, I'll guarantee you this is the Josh Dunn stamp of approval on this, you will meet a whole cast of characters you won't see anywhere else. We're also brought to you this week, once again, time number 2, by a semi-anonymous donor, Stowe B, who wants to tell you, Masstown Adventure, where food meets friends and the fun never ends. Whether your trip begins or is coming to an end, what you get, it depends. That sounds very vague to me, folks. I would not answer that flyer if I were you. We're also brought to you this week, once again as always, by Charlie's Club, where most shots are $2.75 on Tuesdays. I was happy to be there last night. Actually, I hadn't been for several weeks. I was there late and got a piece of pizza. It was delicious. Didn't have to have an evening snack. So remember, folks, $2.75 on Tuesdays. So even if you make some real bad choices, you won't go broke making them. This week's, folks, for my topic of discussion, I want to, as I've mentioned before, about how the Department of Community Services decided to claw me back at a rate of 100% for my arts grant, which they wouldn't do for someone who is able to get regular employment. The clawback percentage would be much less. So I am writing a letter of appeal for that, which is the first step of this process. And so I'd like to share my letter of appeal to the Department of Community Services with you just now. It reads, "To whom it may concern, I want to first say that I am grateful for the assistance the department provides, without which I would be completely destitute. But your decision to claw back my assistance at a 100% rate is unfair and plain wrong. An arts grant is not a business. I am, in fact, an employee of the Nova Scotia government, just like you. Arts NS generously funded me to make a documentary film that speaks to the romantic challenges those of us living with mobility issues face. This is important work. By clawing back my assistance at a rate of 100%, you are saying that my work doesn't matter. Unfortunately, due to the other complications of my CP, namely neurogenic bladder and chronic insomnia, I am unable to handle a shift of work. I must live my life in chunks, an hour or two at a time. All I'm asking is that my assistance be clawed back at the rate of someone who is able to work a regular job would be subject to. I'm not asking for special treatment. I am instead asking to be treated like those without such severe limitations. But your decision suggests that I should be penalized more because my limitations are greater. I understand that the department doesn't have many clients who get arts grants, but you must understand I am doing everything I can to have a meaningful and independent existence as much as possible. I've been told by a lawyer that I had to be assessed if I am eligible for self-employment. I was never given such an assessment, and one would not be necessary if you would understand that an arts grant is simply not a business. If you uphold this decision, what reason do I have for trying to seek employment in the field that I'm able if I won't get 1 penny ahead? I implore you to reverse your decision and to treat me like my more able peers. Don't penalize me for what I can't control. Support my initiative for growth. I have little faith that you will overturn yourselves, but I pray that you do. Please understand I am willing to take this to the Supreme Court if necessary. Best regards, Josh Dunn. And just in case part of that wasn't clear, they are evaluating my arts grant as being self-employment, like a business, which clearly isn't the case. So apparently, if you are self-employed, they claw back any of those earnings at a 100% rate. So we will welcome our guest, who is thankfully late enough for me to get this in, Andrew Rankin, in a few minutes, folks. Well, folks, we're here at episode 18 of Gimpin' Ain't Easy 'Cause It Ain't, and I am pleased to welcome my guest, my pal. He's from the Chronicle Herald. I don't know if he wants to be introduced in any other way. His claim to fame, or at least one of them, is that his father knew Elmer Briand. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Mr. Andrew Rankin. How are you, Andrew?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on the podcast. It's a great honor.
Thanks for stopping by, just out of the long arm of the reach of the law. We won't get into that if you'd rather not.
Well, we can get into whatever you like.
Oh, whatever I like. Yeah, so Andrew was a bit late because he was dodging some coppers there outside of my place, but they had the wrong man, let me tell you. That was not his lady's pistol. So I guess I'd like to start this off with the way that I start off every interview pretty much. What was your childhood like?
Oh, my childhood. Well, I was born in Cole Harbour, Nova Scotia, I guess 1979, and it was a great childhood. I grew up there until I was 10 years old, and then I moved to Newfoundland and moved to a very rural, remote fishing community called Port-au-Choix, Newfoundland, and it was an amazing sort of experience in the sense that I had two professional parents, a lawyer, a teacher, and here I was surrounded by fishermen and kids that my age who were sort of being bred to be fishermen. So it was a very rough and tumble people, but very resilient and resourceful, and I think I came to respect that sort of side of people, and so I thought I was very fortunate to experience that, but it came with challenges. So.
Sure. No, I what I just didn't get though is, why did your profession, like, were the job situations in Cole Harbour so poor that they were like, we're going to have better employment opportunities in a small fishing village?
Oh, yeah.
What was that about?
I often get that question. I guess, well, I think the setup was that my dad left teaching when he was just before I was born, and so he went to law school, and my father has always been kind of I guess a rebel, I guess maybe that's too strong of a word, but a little bit of a maverick, and so he just did his own thing from the house, and but he grew up in a small community in Cape Breton, and so wanted to get to a smaller place. My mom was looking after, five of us. There's five kids, and so, uh, the a teaching gig. My mom was a home ec teacher. Came up in Newfoundland, and they sort of said, "Oh, that seems like an interesting thing. So opportunity." So they took it.
Yeah, so okay, so there were chances, and your father had that Cape Breton background, so the longing for the sort of rural setting, right?
Yeah, I think that was it was more of an adventure. So they decided, why not go for it?
Sweet. And what were your interests? Like, did journalism pull you in kind of from an early age, or was that a relatively recent interest?
Well, I think that I don't know. I got in a little bit of trouble at school, and I kind of always rebelled a bit, and so that was always a part of it, and I think I always had an appreciation for writing and literature, but I never considered myself a writer, and I still don't. And it was just more of a curiosity in people, and having that, a little bit of a rebellious edge as a kid. And so I didn't go to university straight out of school. I did some traveling, and I just decided a few years after traveling to places like Ireland and Israel that I thought I had some of the tools needed to be a reporter. Mainly that I was curious, and that I like people, and I do like writing, and so I thought I couldn't think of anything else I would rather do. I just didn't want to do a straight up arts degree, so I thought it'd be
You
good.
wanted to get a job.
I did want to get a job, yes. So that's what I decided when I was actually, what was I? I was 22 years old or 23 when I applied and was accepted at St. Thomas. St. Thomas University journalism program, but I'd actually applied to King's, but I was a little bit late there, so that's what happened.
Well, reputed as the King's journalism institution is, you're still working, right?
Yes.
So we'll give a little props out to the St. Thomas journalism program there as well, I guess.
Yeah.
So that's cool. So you had an interest in literature and writing and things like that, and then you kind of got the cosmopolitan worldview from seeing things around. Was there is the main drive behind what you're doing trying to report on some of the struggles of the underdog?
I guess that's part of it. It's I don't know, just something I like I said, I find I find that people are generally pretty interesting, and people get into a lot of interesting things, and I find that I'm compelled to tell those stories just about people, and it doesn't have to be their struggle, but that's compelling. A story about somebody's the struggles that people endure, but it's also about like some of the joy that they experience, and so it's just human stories that I like to tell, I guess.
Yeah, no, I dig it, man. It's like whatever's going to make an interesting yarn. Whether it be struggles or triumphs or whatever, just something that's going to catch the. Are you looking more for maybe from folks that people don't hear from as much, or just like anybody that might sort of grab your fancy? It's like, oh, I should do a story on that person or scenario, right?
Yeah, well, I look at. I generally look at a story idea and think to myself, would generally people find that interesting? And I think, sorry, excuse me, my instincts are pretty good on that. So, I try to write in a way that is appealing to most people, and it seems to be okay. Like I think I'm doing okay, right?
Yeah, I think, and this is just from knowing you a little bit, and I mean, I don't profess to know you well, um, but you know, becoming hardened by the hardness of the world. You know that the that the difficulties are just so insurmountable that someone gets just completely beaten down and loses that good side of their self. You know, because it's all so hopeless.
Yeah, well, there's that, but there's also just maintaining, your individuality and not being, I guess, um, beaten down to, and I don't know if it's beaten down, but feeling pressure to be like everybody else. But I mean,
Yeah.
a certain amount of that is inevitable, I think. Um, but you strive to be a little different if it comes easy enough, I guess.
I think that's a good idea. I think in my case, I might need to strive to fit in a little bit more because I mean, it may not always come across because I think I wear it fairly well, but I think I'm extremely different. And I kind of, you know, not as much when I was a kid. When I was a kid, I did want to fit in and be like everybody else, but I have really no interest, and I don't think I'm me, and maybe because I'm not like anybody, I can reach a lot of different people because I'm just as equally not like them.
Hmm.
I mean, that sounds entirely egotistical, you know. Well, I'm the most different, you know.
Yeah,
Maybe
well,
not.
I think it's a pretty natural, normal thing to want to fit in. It might not be you want to fit in with the general public, but there's always like a group of people that you want acceptance from, and you want to be part of that clique, right? I don't think anybody wants to be on their own. So I think that that's a normal, natural thing, and anybody who says that it isn't, that they're not striving, but wouldn't like to be liked or wouldn't like to be respected by people is not being fully honest, I think.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, there are some really like into themselves, completely self-contained cats that I've met here and there, but certainly not the norm. And even me, like I don't necessarily go for the group or the clique, but I definitely want acceptance from my individual friends, and like you said, like, you know, recognition for your work. That's very important to me. And so I think the flip side of that question of the greatest challenges is what would you say some of your greatest accomplishments have been?
Uh, um, I guess I always wanted it to be a reporter, and every day I'm thankful that I am. I don't consider myself the best reporter. I don't consider myself the worst reporter around, but I take it as a real privilege and to do what I do. And as you know, with the newspaper industry, there's less and less uh, print reporters. So I'm grateful that I can do what I do. So that's and to get and I guess to impact some people with the work that I do, and that's something that I'm proud of, I guess, or feel good about. And um, beyond that, um, I guess that I'm a decent human being, I guess.
That is an accomplishment because not everybody is,
Yeah.
man.
Well, we all have our shortcomings, but try.
Right, you know that you're, you know, doing the best you can. I think that was really crucial that you hit on too about how, you know, you're actually able to do what you want to do for a living, and in a you know, a medium that is kind of dying, right? So
Yeah.
print, and hopefully not completely, but that was I want to ask you, would you be able, like, to just do online reporting or something if like print media goes away like completely, if there's no more newspapers.
Well, yes, but I mean, the model, the business model of newspapers is not being replaced by anything. So, I mean, I think the issue is that 20 or so years ago, you know, it was a it was a it was a big thing if you owned a printing press, right? That was like owning Facebook in a way, right? Where nobody, there's only a select people who did, and then of course you would get all kinds of advertising because of that. But that's printing press has now been replaced by web 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 pages, right, and Facebook pages,
Yep.
and everybody has access to web page, can make their own web page and have their own Facebook page, and so you're competing with that, and the reality is you're going to have to find a way. Nobody's has found a way to duplicate the revenue generated by a newspaper and an online platform.
And maybe that's what I've got to learn how to do, because I like how you say, with the internet, the great proliferation and sort of every voice, for better and for worse, can be out there, right?
Yeah.
So that means yahoos like me can do a show too, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be heard by, a couple hundred people, hopefully. And yeah, that's interesting, though, that the newspaper model is still the most financially viable. So
Yeah.
maybe should I just marry like a newspaper tycoon, maybe, or something?
Well, I think it's a little late. I don't know if there's any tycoons around, but maybe you can marry somebody who's made a huge fortune.
Okay, I'll
from the
marry.
newspapers.
I'll marry
but
Mrs. Bitcoin or something.
Yes, I suspect the person would be quite elderly,
Oh,
but she could have inherited it. So
that's
it's worth pondering for sure.
Hey man, if you're 93, you've got a lot of stories to tell me. That's the way I look at it. Great conversation.
Yes.
Yeah. My grandmother's 92, so
Who is she?
yeah, that's anyway. But she's no heiress or anything like that. Yeah, where's I want to? Let me see. So, what does? This is sort of a very broad question, so forgive me. But what? And you've touched on it a bit. What does journalism mean to you? And what does being a journalist mean to you? Like, what's the responsibility there, if there is one?
Oh, I mean, I don't ever always, or even, I don't measure up to all of the, what's expected of a reporter. Not that I don't measure up. I don't always measure up, I guess, but I don't know. I guess, I do believe that, reporters have a responsibility to hold powerful people accountable and keep people accountable for sure. But, I think that journalism is a very kind of a broad mash of various kinds of stories, arts, entertainment, sports, and politics, and I guess you just try to tell stories of people that are compelling, right? Whether and that I think if you do that, people are generally will be inclined to read them and be and that's the most compelling journalism is about people, and there's great stories to be told, in every area of journalism.
No, that's I think a really cool way to look at it. Just whatever's compelling, whatever grabs, and to represent that in the most impactful way. I think, and I'm not a journalist. Clearly, I mean, I'm kind of a one doing this kind of thing. But I think to me, like at its best, journalism can be truth and justice. But at its worst, it's trash in terms of some the culture of the celebrity, but them doing very foolish things like celebrities and DUIs or doing I just garbage, right? And also at its absolute worst, tools for the oppressive to maintain their control if you don't have a free and independent media.
Yeah, well, I don't necessarily have an issue with entertainment news or just fluff news. I mean,
Sure.
People have an appetite for it, and who am I to say that there's anything wrong with that? I mean, it has its place, and I'm not particularly fond of that kind of reporting, but I'm not also I understand that it sells, and that's important. If people want to pay for it, then that's great. But I think it should be balanced with serious journalism, right? I guess as some people refer to it as.
For lack of a better term, I think you've got to at least have some real news in there.
Yes, for sure, and I guess that's the struggle that a lot of media outlets deal with, right? Is trying to appeal to the less highbrow news and doing journalism that's thought-provoking and compelling and in depth.
Right. Yeah. How do you strike that balance between, what's the most really important things and what the public wants and what's going to sell? I think somebody that's astute would probably be taking all those things into account and trying to strike the best balance, perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah. So have you yourself faced much censorship or anything like that from any of, have you ever not been able to tell a story the way you wanted to tell it?
Not particularly. I find in my experience, if there's ever a story that I felt really strongly about that I wanted to write about, there would be, there would be an argument about, how graphic or how,
if it's like too extreme or something.
Yeah. So there would be some discussion about those things, about how far you could go with the story, and my experience has always been, if I cared enough about a story and I felt it was worthwhile, that it generally would run. It would probably maybe wouldn't go the first time, and it would require some editing or some changes, but it all, no story I've ever written, I guess, that I cared about was ever spiked, as they call it.
Well, yeah, that's actually good to hear. I think some others might have had a bit of trouble with that. I interviewed one other journalist, but
who did you interview?
It was Maggie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it was only one, but she won out in the end. And it might have even been a year later or something.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, she can, if she happens to hear this episode, she can make comment on the video and correct me or something. But yes,
yeah.
So
it happens all the time, and it's not been my experience, and I'm not suggesting that I've written any stories that are, Watergate like stories or you know.
Yeah. Yeah, like the real expose on me. Like
Yes.
here's this guy, this income assistance recipient, but it turns out he's actually in disguise as a nephew of one of the ruling families. He's actually gonna be I'm a secret Rockefeller or Rothschild or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was cool that we did. Were there any what? Yeah, you were telling me about the one. You're doing a story on a veteran, and we had a couple of pops and some tacos on this past Friday night, and I introduced you to the
Good
Bonnie
time.
Bunch of Roses
Yes.
by Colm Walsh, and I'll give a little shout out. I originally found that on Tyler Messick's Facebook wall. Tyler's a musician, and he had posted that traditional.
Yeah,
folk
it's
music.
a beautiful tune.
Yeah.
I always love that, those old sort of Celtic airs, and it was right up my alley. And anyway, I had gone to Veterans Hospital here in Halifax for Second World War veterans, and he's a writer himself, and he's written a couple of books, and he had a Rudyard Kipling poem on the wall, and so I just thought like he would love that song, and he was a very interesting, engaging, and really affable kind of a guy, and so I thought that he would really enjoy that song, and he did. So he said that's extraordinary, and so I felt quite good about the fact that I could share that with him and had that moment with him, and yeah, he loved it.
Yeah, folks, I'm available to DJ hospice care. I know what your relatives in their 90s will like. Trust me, at least when it comes to music.
Oh, you'd be superb.
Yeah. Well, is there anything? Oh yeah, I know what I want to say. I want to say, what stories are you working on now that you think might be of interest to folks? Or yeah.
Oh, I can't give away my story ideas. No. I mean, somebody out there might steal them. No, I don't know. I just got.
What are there topics that interest you more than others?
Lots of different things.
Yeah, you're all over the map.
Yeah, and I would never present myself as a great reporter. I just try as best I can, and but I have, I like everything. I like sports. I like the arts. I like, politics, and so here's a couple things I'm working on. I'll keep those under my hat, but
that's the Watergate, folks. It's coming.
Yes, I've done a few Watergates in my time. I'm joking, obviously.
Yeah, he wasn't reporting when Watergate went down, folks. He was 1 year old.
Were you gonna ask me about the meaning of life?
That's the final question. We're
not there yet. We're not there. I thought you were there.
Don't wreck it for the people, even though they know it's. I'm getting there.
Okay.
I'm getting there. I'm very close.
Good.
Yeah, almost.
I wonder if we're boring the people.
Probably.
No.
So, is there anything you'd like to add to this experience?
No, I think it's great that you're going out and you're engaging people, and this is a great little forum.
I feel kind of like I'm a modern day Studs Terkel, it's people's history.
Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan is
modern day, but I'm saying
I'm probably actually more like Studs Terkel than Joe Rogan. Probably.
There was a program on PBS years ago. I guess it was like there was some older gentleman that used to go around and pay people a quarter to tell them their story, right?
Right.
It was the idea is that everybody has a story, and they're quite interesting because that's true. Everybody kind of does, and so that's where I kind of start at as a reporter.
Yeah, I'm like for this show, I'm probably like a little more selective than that, and I'm also and not that no topic is taboo. Like if someone's passionate about anything, and I think it makes for a compelling kind of thing, then I'm happy to have them on here. I think one type that I might veer away from is like the cafe intellectual or something who just isn't really up to much, and not that I don't care that anybody have success or not. I've had very marginal as it is, but people that just have a bunch of unfounded opinion.
Yeah.
I don't know that makes for a very and not that they don't have a wonderful right to the world views they have, but I'm just not sure that makes for a very compelling. So my deal is I'm looking for people who are up to stuff in the world to the best of their capabilities and trying at life. That's my kind of prerequisite there.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And people who'd want to talk too, right? 'Cause,
Yeah.
you might be the world's greatest Mountie or something. Maybe he doesn't do interviews, right?
Yeah, well, I think
He's too busy getting his man.
so. But I think everybody tries, don't you think? In their own way.
No, I don't. I do. I think most people try. Yep. But do I think that some people don't try at all? Yep, I do.
Really?
Yep.
And you don't feel like they why do you think that?
I think because for the most part, just because they've been just too beaten down and things have been too hard and stuff like that. But even smaller percentage of those people who don't try at all, which is still a small percentage to start with, I would say, are just because they're just not interested in anything.
But they got to get through the day, and that takes effort.
Right.
So they must try.
You got to, yeah. I mean, okay. So if you want to go to at least when it comes to passing the time, does everybody on some level try? Yeah, probably. I'll give you that.
Yeah. But who knows? I mean, they might give the impression on the exterior that they're not trying, but you never know, do you?
Yeah, they could be behind closed doors, like working super hard to like master a skill that they're just too sensitive to show to the world.
But even if they're not, working super hard, the fact that they're, I think, I don't know. I generally subscribe to that. Do I think it's, does it mean that that I'm okay or it's somebody who, doesn't work or doesn't,
right. I've got a good quotable for you. I think, quote this one. If they're breathing, they're trying. Andrew Rankin.
If they're breathing, they're trying. I think that's, I don't know. It's pretty easy to judge people. And it's a normal human
I'm pretty judgmental. Yeah.
Well, I think we all are.
Yeah.
And so, but most of us won't admit that. But I guess the important thing is that you're being judgmental. Oh
yeah, that's half the battle or whatever. Yeah. I can be proven wrong. Not very often, but it happens.
Yeah.
So I think with that, I'd like to wrap this up in way I always do, that you spoiled it for those first-time listeners, which is probably nobody. What do you think the meaning of life is?
There is no real meaning of life, is there? I think that it's just whatever. I'm not knocking anybody for thinking there's a meaning of life. I just think that you have to find a way to enjoy life, and that's the challenge, is to try to figure out what you're good at and try your best to try to be your best self and try to enjoy life and try to be decent to people. But beyond that, I don't see a higher meaning than that, right? I don't think that we're any different than any other species on this planet.
Right. So yeah, in terms of just purely the natural world and that we all live and die, and
yes.
it seems that you would subscribe to the belief that we're here basically at random by chance.
I think so, yeah. But
Right.
that doesn't mean that I don't believe in like spirituality and some level, or
Right.
that there's not that there's that we have a higher purpose. But and it doesn't actually mean that I don't believe in God. It's just
You believe in God, but not that God necessarily intended to create us.
right. There's something I don't discount the idea that there's something out there a higher power, I guess. But ultimately, I don't judge anybody for thinking that, for believing in any sort of organized religion. If it helps them and they enjoy it and they get something out of it, who the hell am I to try to diminish or look down on that?
Right. I think that's a very similar way to. I mean, I do believe in God and think we probably were created for a higher purpose. Not that I claim to know the answers to that, but yeah, for in terms of the organized major religions, as long as they're helping people get through and they're not telling people to kill other people, and go on, I'm in full support of that kind of thing. And I think too, like for someone who's like, well, I don't really think there's me. I think you had a lot of great ones. Just the fact of trying to enjoy life, trying to be a decent human being, and the best version of yourself you can is like very close to my own. Because my feeling was that like we're all here to make, in whatever way that is, make the world a little bit better than it was before we were here. Like that should be the goal, but also to enjoy yourself while doing so, which is can be quite difficult. And yeah, I think that's all I have to say for this week's folks. He's been Andrew Rankin. I've been Josh Dunn, and this is Gimpin' Ain't Easy, 'cause it ain't, episode number 18. And I'm going to tell you, like I do every time, remember, you look yourselves in the mirror every day, especially when you're feeling low. You give yourself that Ric Flair, woo! And tell yourself, I'm the greatest of all time. I know I am. Good night.